My family erased me for 24 years. My parents said they only had 2 kids when they have 3. But when I exposed their betrayal on Reddit, the story went viral and destroyed their reputation forever. I'm 24 years old. I work in digital marketing, and I need to tell this story because my entire life I was invisible to my parents. And when I say invisible, I'm not exaggerating. They literally erased me from their lives like I never existed. Things exploded a few months ago when I decided to tell the whole world what they did to me, and the consequences of that were intense, but I'll get to that. First, I need you to understand how we got here, because this didn't start suddenly. This was a whole lifetime of being ignored while my 2 older brothers were treated like they were royalty or something. I'm the youngest of 3 kids, so I have 2 older brothers, Logan and Parker. Logan is 6 years older than me, and Parker is 4 years older. For as long as I can remember, they were the center of my parents' universe. Logan was the smart one, like the child prodigy who got the best grades, who read complicated books when he was 8 years old, who everyone said was going to be a doctor or lawyer or something impressive. And Parker was the athletic one, the popular one, the one who played basketball and soccer and all the sports, basically. My parents went to every single one of his games. They had all his medals and trophies in the living room, like a permanent exhibition. And I was there, I guess, but nobody really saw me. When I was 9 years old, I started to notice something was wrong. Although at that moment I couldn't put it into words because I was a kid, right? But there were constant signs. I remember my parents would forget to pick me up from school all the time. And I'm not talking about being 10 minutes late. I'm talking about me sitting on the front steps watching all the other kids leave with their parents, and me there waiting for an hour, 2 hours. The teachers started staying with me because they couldn't just leave me alone. And I remember the pity faces they'd give me. Once, there was this terrible storm, with thunder and lightning and the whole thing, and I was still there waiting because my parents simply forgot about me. A teacher had to take me to her house and call my parents 3 times before they answered. When they finally came to get me, 3 hours later, they didn't even really apologize. My mom just said something like, "Oh yeah, sorry, we were watching Parker's game and we lost track of time." She didn't even seem worried that her 9-year-old daughter had been stranded in a storm. Birthdays were another thing. Technically, they threw me birthday parties, but it was so weird because they'd invite their adult friends, not my friends from school. I was 12 years old and my birthday party was full of my dad's coworkers and my mom's book club friends. There were 2 kids my age. I think they were someone's kids who couldn't get a babysitter. And my parents spent the whole party talking among themselves and their friends, showing them pictures of Logan at his debate competition or Parker's latest game. Literally, at my own birthday party, I was invisible. I remember sitting in a corner eating cake alone while all the adults laughed and drank wine. Things got worse in high school. I was a good student, honestly, really good. I don't know if it was from a need for attention or what, but I tried really hard in school. I got straight A's. I was on the honor roll every semester. I won academic awards, and my parents didn't even react. I'd come home excited with a certificate or an award, and they'd barely look up. My mom would say something like, "Oh, that's nice, honey," and keep watching TV or whatever she was doing. Meanwhile, if Parker scored a goal in a practice game, not even a real game, my parents would celebrate like he'd won the Olympics. They'd organize special dinners, take him to his favorite restaurant, the whole thing. When it came time to graduate from high school, I was valedictorian. Best GPA in my entire class. I had to give a speech at graduation and everything. I told my parents 2 months in advance. I reminded them every week. I sent them the formal invitation. Graduation day came, and I was nervous but also excited because I thought, maybe, just maybe, this is the moment they'll finally see me. You know what I mean? This is an achievement they can't ignore. Well, turns out Parker had a basketball game that same day. It wasn't even an important game. It was literally a regular season game, one of 20 in the year. And my parents decided to go to Parker's game instead of my graduation. They sent me a text message an hour before saying, "We're so sorry, but Parker's game is important for his team record. We'll record your speech if someone can. Congratulations." I just stood there in my cap and gown reading that message and I felt like someone had hollowed me out, Like all the air had left my lungs. I gave my speech in front of the whole school and when I looked to where my parents should have been sitting, there were just 2 empty chairs. My best friend Victoria and her family were there, and after the ceremony, they hugged me and congratulated me. And Victoria's mom was crying, saying how proud she was of me, and I could only think that it was someone else's mom who was proud of me, not my own. Logan didn't come either, by the way. He was in college and said he had final exams, even though graduation was on a Saturday, so I don't know what exams he had on Saturday, but whatever. I got a full scholarship to college, one of those super competitive scholarships that covers everything: tuition, housing, books, everything. It was a huge relief, because I knew my parents weren't going to pay a cent for my education. When I told them about the scholarship, my dad said something like, well, less expenses for us, and that was it. There was no celebration, no pride, nothing. Meanwhile, they'd established huge college funds for Logan and Parker. Logan went to a super expensive private university, and my parents paid for everything happily. Parker was at a state university but on the basketball team, and my parents still paid for his apartment and expenses and everything. I went off to college and basically cut off all contact with my family for a while. Not because I wanted to create drama, but because I just realized they never contacted me anyway. So what was the point? Weeks would go by without them sending me a message. I'd send them pictures of my college life, academic achievements, photos with my friends, and I'd get one-word responses, or they'd just leave me on read. But in the family chat we had, my parents constantly sent messages about Logan and Parker, photos, updates, everything. College was liberating, honestly. For the first time in my life, I was in an environment where people actually saw me and valued me. I had incredible friends, professors who recognized my work, opportunities I took full advantage of. Victoria went to the same university as me, which was perfect because she was basically my real sister in everything but blood. She knew everything I'd gone through with my family and always supported me. During the first 2 years of college, I barely went home. I made up excuses not to go during breaks. I stayed on campus or went to Victoria's house. But in my 3rd year, I decided to try one more time. I don't know why. I guess part of me still had hope that things could change. I went home for Thanksgiving, and it was probably the worst mistake I could have made. I arrived at the house and basically nobody greeted me enthusiastically. My mom said, "Hi," like I was a distant acquaintance, not her daughter she hadn't seen in months. Logan and Parker were there with their girlfriends, and everyone was in the living room talking and laughing. I tried to join the conversation, but it was like I didn't exist. They talked about themselves, their lives, their plans, and when I tried to say something, they'd interrupt me or just ignore me. The next day, Thanksgiving Day, a neighbor came over to bring something. I don't remember what. I was in the kitchen helping prepare the food, because nobody else was helping, by the way, and I heard the neighbor in the living room talking to my dad. The neighbor asked something like, "So how many kids do you have now?" And my dad responded, "We have 2 sons, Logan and Parker." 2. I froze with the knife in my hand cutting vegetables. The neighbor kept asking about them, and my dad told him everything about their lives and accomplishments, completely excited. He never mentioned me. Not once. I walked out of the kitchen and went straight to the living room. The neighbor had already left. I told my parents we needed to talk. My mom made that annoyed face, like, what does she want now? I said, "I just heard Dad tell the neighbor you have 2 kids. What am I then?" My dad looked uncomfortable and said something like, "Well," he asked about the boys. "It's a figure of speech." And I said, "No, it's not a figure of speech. You completely erased me." I started listing everything. The years of being forgotten, ignored, erased. The graduation they missed. The birthdays where I was invisible. The times they left me stranded at school. I told them I'd spent my whole life trying to earn their attention and love, and it was never enough because they simply didn't care. My mom got angry. Not because she was worried about how I felt, but because I was making them uncomfortable. She said I was being dramatic, that they'd always tried to do their best, that I should be grateful for everything they'd given me. I said grateful for what exactly? For letting me know I'm less important than my brothers at every opportunity? Logan and Parker were there during this whole conversation, and neither of them said anything to defend me. They just sat there watching me like I was the crazy one. I left that house that same day. I packed all my stuff, which wasn't much because I'd never really accumulated anything there, and I left. Victoria came to pick me up because I was crying so much I couldn't drive. As I was loading my suitcases into the car, my mom came out and told me I was being immature, that every family has problems, that I needed to grow up and get over these things. I told her she'd never been a mother to me, that I'd spent my whole life basically raising myself, and that from that moment on she could officially tell people she only had 2 kids because I didn't want to be part of this family anymore. The next few months were weird. I focused on school, on my part-time job, on my friends, but there was this constant weight of everything that had happened. Victoria told me I should tell my story, that keeping all that inside wasn't healthy. At first I didn't want to because, I don't know, I guess part of me still felt that automatic family loyalty, or whatever it's called. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, why should I protect them? Why should I stay quiet about years of emotional neglect just to save their reputation? I decided to write everything on Reddit. I chose Reddit because it's anonymous, but also because I knew a lot of people would read it. I spent like a week writing everything, every detail, every painful moment. I talked about the times they forgot me, about my graduation, about hearing my dad deny me as his daughter. I didn't use real names, obviously, but I told the complete and honest story of what it was like growing up invisible to your own parents. I posted it on a Sunday night. By Monday morning, I had like 1,000 comments. By Tuesday, it had completely exploded. Thousands and thousands of people commenting, sharing their own similar stories, offering support. The amount of people who'd experienced similar things was shocking and also validating. You know? For years I'd thought maybe I was exaggerating, that maybe I was the problem. But seeing thousands of people telling me no, that what my parents did was emotional abuse and neglect, it was like finally someone was seeing me and believing me. The post went viral. It started appearing on other platforms, on Twitter, on Facebook, on those sites that compile Reddit stories, and that's when things got intense. Someone, I don't know who, probably some family member or acquaintance, sent the link to the post to my parents. Even though I didn't use real names, there are enough specific details that anyone who knew us would know who I was talking about. My mom went crazy. She started a complete damage control campaign on Facebook. She posted this long, super dramatic post about how they have a daughter who's going through mental health issues, who's been making up stories and seeking attention, that they've been loving and dedicated parents, and that they're devastated by these false accusations. She painted this picture of them as the victims, and me as an unstable and ungrateful daughter. And people who only knew their version, their friends and some family members, believed her and started commenting things like, "How terrible, we're praying for you. Kids are so difficult sometimes." Then the messages from family members started. Uncles, aunts, cousins, everyone came out to tell me I was being too harsh, that I should forgive, that family is family, and these problems should be resolved privately. Nobody asked for my side of the story. Nobody asked if I was okay. They just told me I was wrong to expose my family like that publicly, that I should be ashamed, that I was breaking up the family. And I thought, what family? The family that ignored me my whole life? A week after the viral post, I got an email from a lawyer. My parents sent me a cease and desist letter demanding I remove the Reddit post immediately, threatening legal action for defamation. The letter was super formal and threatening, basically saying if I didn't take down the post in 48 hours, they were going to sue me. Victoria was furious when I showed it to her. She told me to consult with a lawyer, which I did. And turns out they didn't really have a case because everything I wrote was true, and also it was technically anonymous. Instead of taking down the post, I did something that was probably petty, but I needed to do. I posted an update. In that update, I included screenshots of text messages where their disinterest over years was clear. I included a photo of the cease and desist letter, with the lawyers' names and everything covered, obviously. And the piece de resistance was a photo that Victoria had taken at my high school graduation, showing the 2 empty chairs where my parents should have been, while all the other rows were full of proud families. I wrote in the update, "These are the parents who say they were always there for me." The update went even more viral than the original post. People were outraged about the cease and desist letter, saying it was the most manipulative move possible. The comments multiplied. Thousands of people sharing similar stories and offering support. Some even offered free legal help. If my parents actually tried to sue me, my parents went quiet after that. No more Facebook posts, no more messages through family members. I think they finally realized that the more they pushed, the worse they looked. But the damage to their reputation was already done. I started getting messages from people from my hometown, saying they now understood a lot of things, that they'd always thought something was off about how my family functioned but couldn't identify what. I decided I needed more permanent closure. I started the process of legally changing my last name. I filled out all the paperwork, paid the fees, and officially became Scarlett with a completely new last name that I chose myself. I also removed them from all my official records. In the space where it says emergency contact information, at the doctor, at school, everywhere, I deleted their names and put Victoria and her family. I basically cut all legal and official ties that connected me to them. Logan messaged me after the name change became official. It was weird because it was the first time in years he'd contacted me directly. He said he thought I was taking all this too far, that he understood I was upset but that changing my last name was extreme. I responded asking him where he'd been all those years when I was being ignored and forgotten. I asked him if he'd ever noticed how they treated me compared to him and Parker. I asked him why he never said anything in my defense. He didn't respond. Parker never contacted me at all. Now I'm planning the holidays, and for the first time in my life, I'm genuinely excited. Victoria and I are doing a Friendsgiving with our whole group of close friends. For Christmas, I'm going to be with Victoria's family, who basically adopted me as another daughter years ago. Her mom calls me honey and asks me about my life, and actually, listens to the answers. Her dad helped me fix my car last month and didn't charge me anything. That's the family I chose, not the family I got by blood. People ask me sometimes if I regret making all that public, if I regret burning that bridge completely. And the truth is no, not at all. I spent 24 years being invisible, being erased, trying to earn a love I was never going to receive. The Reddit post, telling my story, wasn't revenge, even though some see it that way. It was reclaiming my narrative. It was saying this is my truth, this is my experience, and I'm not going to stay quiet to protect people who never protected me. There are difficult days. I'm not going to lie. There are days where I see other families and I feel that pain of what I never had. But there are also days where I feel free. Freer than I ever felt when I was still trying to be enough for them. I got an incredible job after graduating from college. I have friends who are my real family, and I'm building a life where I matter, where I'm seen, where my voice counts. Last week was my 24th birthday. Victoria threw me a surprise party with all our friends. When I walked in and everyone yelled surprise, I started crying because it was the first time in my life I had a real birthday party where people were actually there for me. There was a cake with my name on it. There were gifts that showed people really knew me and paid attention to what I liked. And when I blew out the candles, my wish was simple, that I never feel invisible again, and surrounded by those people. In that moment, I knew that wish had already come true.